One of the things that professors of homiletics ask you to do is to consider what the purpose of any given sermon is. Are you trying to exhort people? Are you trying to make clear what the promises of God are? Are you trying to comfort people? Are you trying to educate people? Well, I will have to say that always, one of my goals is simply to enable you all to have the Bible, in effect, written on your heart. What I want you to do is know the stories so that as you are out in the world encountering God and God's creation, these stories might come to you and speak to you in some way that I might not even imagine. So sometimes the best I can do is simply to tell you the story and hope that you can absorb it. That's what today's sermon is in the spirit of. He had done well to let no one know about the skin ailment that had started on his side and then moved around to his back and onto his chest. Skin diseases of those type made everyone nervous, lest they portend some ill health, some vitality-draining disease that might be contagious. That he had a rash was not surprising. After all, he had been constantly wearing his armor in campaign after campaign after campaign. Now, this was the time of almost constant military interactions between Assyria and its many vassal kingdoms, such as Israel and Judah, the two countries that were heir to the reign of King David. The armor that Naaman wore was bronze, made of a copper alloy, and it was in segments, kind of linked together like fish scales and laced with leather lacing. And he wore that over his chest and back, and under it usually a tunic of leather with flaps that hung down over his thighs to protect his legs, and then bronze greaves over his lower legs. Now, what was clear is that he was unusually sweaty under all that armor, and the chafing was significant. Now, you may ask how it is that I knew all this. I had been captured in one of Naaman's campaigns into Israel before the peace treaty had been signed between Israel and Aram Damascus, the country he was from. And Naaman took me so that I could be a servant to his wife. Now, Naaman had told none of his army about the disease, but when he came home now and again, his wife put me to work treating his ailments. I was knowledgeable in the way of herbs. First, I would clean the pustules with an extract of cedar wood, while providing him a tincture on his tongue of frankincense to strengthen his vital energy. Then I would make a salve of myrrh, fennel flower, and spinach beet, and apply that to the rash. But alas, these things could not be tended while he was out leading his army, and once again he would put on all that armor, and once again it would all flare up. When he came home that particular time, the rash was beginning to creep up his neck, and my tinctures and salves simply could not keep pace with the discomfort. And moreover, it was beginning to be visible to others. I knew this was now beyond my capacity, but I had heard of Elisha, the famed prophet in my homeland. In fact, there was a story of him that during a famine, one of Elisha's disciples had intended to gather roket, a medicinal herb especially efficacious for eye diseases, but the disciple got confused about his vines and instead collected and boiled a dish of colocynth, and the one to whom it was served cried out after the first taste, "There is death in this pot." But by adding some flour to the dish, Elisha was able to absorb the fruit's bitter and toxic substance, and all was well after all. That's how good Elisha was. So I begged Naaman's wife to send him to go to Israel, telling her about the prophet who lived there. Well, to be sure, Naaman was desperate by then, so we went together, I and his wife, and a few man and maid servants as well. Naaman had his king write a letter of safe journey to the king of Israel, Joram, so that his arrival there would cause no suspicion. The peace treaty between Aram Damascus and Israel being a little tenuous at this point. Well, that did not work as expected. King Joram was suspicious that something nefarious was afoot, and that Naaman's visit would be a pretext to end the peace treaty. Luckily, Elisha, the very prophet of whom I heard tell, heard of his king's reaction. Elisha cared little for the politics of Israel and longed only to serve the one God, I am that I am, Yahweh. So Elisha told King Joram that it would be a good thing for a foreigner to be healed, that the God of Israel might become known to other nations, and that other people might find ways to cooperate as they all worshiped the same one God. So when news came that Elisha would heal Naaman, Naaman drove his chariot to the entrance of Elisha's house. Elisha, however, did not treat Naaman with the deference and attention that Naaman expected, his being such a well-known general. Perhaps Naaman expected something along the lines of the tinctures and salves that I had provided. I do not know. But what I do know is that when he was back where we were all lodging together, he was completely enraged because Elisha made no effort to see him, but instead simply sent a messenger to the chariot in which he sat, saying, "Go and wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh will be restored." Naaman was storming, shouting when he returned, "Are not the waters of Abana and Parphar better than all the Jordan waters Wouldn't it not be enough for him to come and clean my skin wounds? Why would I be here in the first place to see him if all I needed to do was go into some waters? I could have done that back at home. This Elisha must be a charlatan. He has sent me away and with the most suspect of prescriptions, when surely a man of my stature should have received far more attention. I have been duped by that servant girl of Israel to even seek this man out. Naaman raged and raged like this through the evening and the next morning as well. We, his wife, and the servants could make nothing out of this and could not move him from his anger. But we did understand that his pride had been hurt and that he assumed that something more complex must have been needed to ease his significant suffering. I kept telling other servants through this whole time about the stories of Elisha, saying, he's able to do these things. You should convince Naaman to go to the waters. He is to be trusted, Elisha is. He is a great healer. Now, I did as much as I could in the short time before I was dismissed. Naaman was so angry, though his wife kept me safe and promised that she would help me return to my family in Jerash. Finally, it was decided that another one of his servants, also a captive from Israel, hence, if he too was going to be dismissed, it would be okay. He could go home. That servant would try to convince Naaman to do what was prescribed. The servant ventured into him most humbly, saying, "If a prophet had commanded you to do something really difficult, like climb up to the top of a mountain and gather 3 rare berries from the seed of the tree that is there, you would have done that, would you not? Why not at least try this simple thing?" Naaman, somewhat becalmed, decided to go to the water. And he bathed himself the 7 times there with all the other Israelites who were there, the great and the humble. And by that evening, the itchiness was gone and the rash was drying somewhat. And the next day, it was beginning to recede. Naaman was humbled. And he went back to Elijah because he was also very grateful. He said to Elijah, "Now I know there is no God in all the earth except in Israel, and you, Elisha, are a prophet of the God of Israel." Naaman wished most ardently to make a present to Elijah, but Elisha refused to receive one. So instead, Naaman said, "Then let me collect 2 big loads of earth to bring back with me to Aram Damascus, and in this way I can stand on the soil of Israel and worship the God of Israel." Now, I wish I could say that this was the end to all the troubles between Aram, Damascus, and Israel, but it was not so. Elisha, however, continued to perform miracles for all the people of Israel and was much respected. And as for Naaman, he and his household from then on were loyal to the God of Israel. Loyal because of the wonderful work that Elisha had done. And Naaman was never again thus afflicted.